The second thing is that I think clearly the Middle East uprisings are sort of caught a lot of people by surprise, but shouldn't have, because of all of the reports over the decades about how awful sort of the economic and social systems were, bad for women, for education, and things like this. These sorts of, this dignity and prosperity agenda, if you will, that's coming to fore in the Middle East, I think it's largely driven by sort of the core basic issues. And I think this notion of people in Egypt or other places looking at Turkey as a model, I think is oversimplified. I think they see it as sort of kind of an interesting thing to look at, but what they have going on in their own countries is their own sort of set of circumstances. And if anyone can help them out with that, that would be very good. And towards that end, when I was in Doha at the Al Jazeera Forum in March, I saw the Foreign Minister Davutoglu from Turkey speak. And this is just my own personal observation. Some people consider it unfair. But he talked about, and he wrote an article later about this, about standing up for the dignity of the people of the region. And his two examples of this were the flotilla and when Erdogan walked out at the event at Davos with Israel. I thought, to me, that was below sort of what Turkey has to offer, because it pandered to the most base sort of instincts that, yes, the conflict drives things in the Middle East, but it's not the sole thing, and I disagree with anyone who tries to disentangle the two, the Middle East uprisings sort of as a result of the need for dignity and resolving the Arab-Israeli conflict. But you need a balanced approach, I think, and I think going back to the sort of public communications and messaging, and Turkey does this. I mean, they're doing a great role. They have a lot to offer to the Middle East, but they should also understand that the Middle East has its own baggage and would like to see some help, but they're going to sort of craft their own way forward, and Turkey can be one of those countries that works with the U.S. and others to help countries like Egypt and Tunisia ride through this transition.
Just a couple of words. I think it's too early to come a definitive answer here, because the influence with whom are we talking about? The governments in the Middle East, or the future governments in the Middle East, or the people in general? They are three different things now. So the final result of the struggle will determine whether Turkish influence has risen or gone down. For the first time in Turkish history, Turkey allowed Syrian opposition groups to meet in Turkey, in Antalya, to talk and to coordinate. This is significant. Obviously, it would increase Turkey's influence and leverage on the Syrian opposition. But would that make Turkey endear Turkey to Assad? I would doubt it. So it will depend on the end result of this struggle. But what it showed, these uprisings and changes, it showed the limitations of Turkey for achieving quick results. There was some sense in Turkey that Turkey could do almost anything in the Middle East if he wanted to. And I think this uprising has shown the limitations that in the short term it's not that easy to deal with the Middle Eastern issues, various different issues. But on general level, more important is not Turkey has invested, of course, a lot with the current governments in the Middle East for over the last 10 years. And if the current government has changes, it will inevitably affect Turkish influence in the Middle East. But let us not forget that people don't see it about this, but Turkey has connections with every single opposition or every single small group in Iraq. Bring them regularly in Turkey, talk to them, and foreign ministry himself talks to them regularly. And as far as I know, Turkey also have connections with Syrian opposition and Libyan opposition and different Egyptian groups and etc. So whoever comes to the power, then let's see what kind of connection Turkey has. Then we can talk about this influence.
Yes, over there, lady.
Is this working? Yeah. My name is Minty Reiser from the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area. This is a question to Jay Solomon and Professor Aydin. Jay, you mentioned something quite interesting in terms of communications between Netanyahu and his Turkish colleagues. And I'm wondering how you see the Israeli-Turkish relationship playing out against the tapestry of the changes in other parts of the region, And I'd also like Professor Aydin to comment on where he sees things going.
Yeah, it's an interesting time right now because the relations were so bad, and I think the fact that this second flotilla, apparently under some political pressure, didn't go ahead was well received in Israel. And I think the Syria case, Israel's always had a very strained relationship with Syrians. On the one hand, they're at war. On the other hand, the Israelis, at least traditionally, seem to prefer having Assad in power because at least they kind of knew what he was, and the country seemed maybe less of a threat because it was a minority rule that they were comfortable with that more than a change. I think the Syria card could go either way as far as how it will help or hurt Israeli-Syrian relations. I think that there is still a lot of fear in Israel that you could have some new regime that is either a Muslim Brotherhood element or something of that ilk that could be potentially more threatening to Israel than the past. But that type of government might be fine with Erdogan. So I think there's kind of a convergence right now because things are so unstable that both sides both the Israelis and the Syrians want to see that they don't want to see violence spill over the borders on either side. But I think that convergence could quickly split. And this summer is going to be really dicey because I don't think anyone thinks the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Palestinian negotiations are going to pick up. I mean, there's a lot of action on it, but unless something really drastic happens in the next couple of weeks, I think the Palestinians are going to go ahead, and I'm pretty sure that the Turks would probably support them, as even some in Europe will, and the Israelis will then feel even more isolated, and the relationship could turn tough. So I think the next few months will be pretty telling as far as where that relationship goes.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I think there is an attitude now in both sides to kind of wait and see what's happening in the next couple of months. I have some information regarding the negotiations between Turkey and Israel about within the European United Nations, and apparently it doesn't go anywhere. They're very close to agree, but yet they are not so close to agree because the only issue that they have to agree finally is the legality of action of Israeli action against Turkish flotilla. I think the Israelis feel that if they accept the legality of that action, it will limit their actions and foreign policy in the future, so they are afraid of accepting illegality. And on the Turkish side, all the arguments has been based on illegality of Israeli action, that going back from that is almost impossible now. So that they are stuck on one point, and it's very difficult to solve. And of course, something that we should also put into account is the problem of coalition in Israel. If we had two strong governments on both sides, moving forward would have been much more easier. But once you have a big coalition government and kind of a foreign minister in Israel, then it's very difficult to move ahead.